Today I'll be presenting my unconventional journey to Buddhism as a non-binary girl. Before we begin, I have 3 trigger warnings. I'll be talking briefly about suicide, homophobia, and conversion therapy. If you find these topics distressing, please take a mental health break outside the room right now. So first, I'll share about my spiritual journey in Singapore, the most religious, diverse country in the world, according to Pew Research Center. So I'm grateful to be here in a place where I've gotten to learn more about Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Taoism, and more. Not through books, but through people and their lived experiences. And we begin with me as a child. Growing up in a family where my parents were not adherents to any faith, I did wonder from time to time whether there was a God out there. And as a very stressed out Singaporean student, I grappled with existential crisis every time a major exam rolled around. PSLE, O-levels, A-levels. Yeah, but just before I started university, I began going to church. I struggled as a Greek Christian to reconcile my faith and sexuality. I went to conversion therapy to meet some friends. Unfortunately, when one of them took their life many years later, I left the mainstream church and joined the country's only queer-affirming church, Free Community Church. And it was there at an interfaith cell group that a trans girl invited me to their presentation they conducted on AI and Buddhism at the Medical Dharma Circle in the US. And I can't remember a single thing about their presentation, but I remember that she was comfortable about being openly trans, and that made me comfortable about being openly gay too. And a pivotal experience happened when I had a conversation with a Buddhist nun once, and she was very perceptive and realized I was queer. After I told her a bit about my journey, she told me, all we want is for you to be happy. And that completely altered how I view faith. Experiencing meditation in an interfaith cell group through my trans friend was a mind-expanding experience as well. She led us through a short 5-minute guided meditation once on metta, or loving kindness. It was a rather indescribable experience. I felt like my mind, my body, and my heart was filled with such love and peace, and highly recommended. So I thought I'd share about my queer perspective on the 4 Brahma Vihara, which is Pali, for the 4 perfections, 4 sublime attitudes and measurables, depending on who you ask. They are basically 4 Buddhist virtues with accompanying meditation practices to help one cultivate them. And firstly, metta. In metta meditation, a phrase often used to help guide us is, may all be well and happy. As an ND, I sometimes have modified it to say, may all be well and happy, straight or gay, male or female, cis or trans. And that makes me very happy too. And then we move on to karuna, or compassion. I like to think that we should all cultivate compassion towards all queer beings, beginning with myself. Because sometimes growing up queer and religious in Singapore fills one with self-hatred. That is a particularly good practice to help counteract that. And next, mudita, or appreciative joy. In a competitive society, we are often fighting to see who will be first. It can get rather toxic, like most gay drama. So I like to cultivate appreciative joy for all my queer siblings whenever something good happens to them, because we should all celebrate together. And finally, pecha, or equanimity. This is one of the hardest things for me as a temperamental person. So I like to remember that it is so important to cultivate equanimity, especially in the face of queer oppression. Because even though Section 3770 has been repealed, discrimination still abounds. So next, I thought I should share a little bit about my favorite non-binary bodhisattva in Buddhism. It's popularly known as the goddess of compassion. Did you know that she was originally male? So it's a very long story, but over the years it became female, and if you look closely at Guan Yin statues, they are surprisingly all flat-chested. Which brings me to the Buddhist teaching of non-duality. I have found this one of the hardest to wrap my mind around. But as a non-binary girl who's in a double paradox, not being in either polarity or male or female, and yet still leaning more towards one gender, I think I am slowly beginning to comprehend. And then, during a presentation I gave earlier this year on the similarities and differences between Christianity and Buddhism, I discovered her, Maria Kanon. So she's a figurine of Guan Yin with a hidden cross behind because she's supposed to represent Mother Mary, and during the era where Japanese Christians were persecuted, they disguised Mary as Guan Yin, and that just blew my mind away. So some of you might wonder whether I'm currently Christian or Buddhist. I'd say that because one faith is theistic, and the other is non-theistic, I do not see a contradiction, and I would say I'm a believer in both. So some might call me a heretic, but it makes sense to my non-dualistic brain, and these are the two queer-affirming religious groups I am a part of. And one thing I love about both faiths is the practice of chanting. You've probably heard about Gregorian chants. I don't do that, but I've recently taken up Buddhist chanting with a mala or prayer beads and found it tremendously helpful. So it helps me concentrate and it's meditative, and I find it a thoroughly magical practice as well. And one of the chants I do goes like this: Namo Guan Shin Pusa, which translates to homage to Bodhisattva Guan Yin, and I do this 108 times on my mala. I try to every night, visualizing my favorite non-binary Bodhisattva, and then I go to sleep with peace in my heart. And as a random person, I thought I would end off this presentation with a random Buddhist meme. The diversity of various schools of Buddhism parallels the diversity of denominations in Christianity. There's much to learn from each one of them, and it makes the world a more colorful place to live in. So thank you for listening to my unconventional journey into Buddhism as a non-binary girl. Should you wish to learn more, there's more material on my website, and should you have any questions, feel free to approach me later in the Q&A. I'll send you a message to my website, and thank you so much, and I hope that one day you have the privilege of experiencing a spiritual awakening just like I did. Thank you.